All right, good morning and welcome. This is the continuation of the celebration of the 30th anniversary of the International Business and Trade Summer Law Program. In June, we were able to celebrate that in Kraków and at a wonderful celebration. Right outside the door out there, we have a monitor which is running a tape of a panel we had in June, which Thomas Schmal also joined. And that was on the history of the summer program, looking forward to the summer, looking forward to the future. And that is available. You probably won't want to stand there for an hour and a half today and watch it, but it's available on the CUA YouTube channel. We also, some of you know, did with the pandemic in 2021, we suspended our American law program in Kraków, and we did a webinar series, a 16 webinar series with CUA professors, with alumni of our Poland programs as commenters, and then we did 8 of our LLM speakers like Vincenzo as speakers, and with alumni here, also of JD alumni as commenters. All of those webinars are on the YouTube channel. They continue to get views. I think one of them is up to close to 500 views now, and they are about really interesting, timely topics. So I think people go into Google and they find them. Right now, we're just completing a 7 webinar series that Wojciech, in our ALM coordinator and now director in Poland, has organized, which is about legal careers. And that features different aspects, like the difference in being a Polish notary versus how real estate is done in the United States. Thomas Schmal recently did one on activity in public policy, lawyers involved in public policy. So those 7 webinars will shortly be on the YouTube channel as well. And those should be, particularly interesting to law students, young lawyers who are thinking about careers in law, because I think sometimes, maybe even a little more in Europe than in the US, people think about legal careers in a very narrow way, and as opposed to the fact that a law degree really opens a lot of doors to a pretty broad range of careers. So again, we're really pleased to have you here at this 30th anniversary celebration. From its commencement with the first summer in 1992, we have more than 1,000 students who have completed the program. From the beginning, this program is unique among US summer programs, which became very popular in the 80s, 90s, 2000s. I describe many US law school summer programs as American bubbles. And what I mean is that a US student and US students and US professors go to some other country and take classes. And that's great. I mean, that's an expansion of your experience. But our program was always unique, given, of course, its founding by Professor Lubakowski, who is a Krakow native, who had been on the faculty at Jagiellonian. And so from the beginning, we had US students and then Polish, but now increasingly to additional countries like Italy, for example, of people from other countries who went to school together, who had classes together. We had American teachers and Polish teachers. And as I'll talk a little bit more, I can attest that lifelong friendships have been formed, lifelong professional relationships, even I think a couple of weddings. We had a couple who met in the summer program at the 1992 reunion. So also I believe is Katarzyna Rybska here yet? Great. Okay. We're very happy that the head of public and cultural diplomacy from the Polish embassy is with us today. We have Katarzyna Rybka-Iwanska and her husband Mateusz Iwanski, who is also a lawyer, who are joining us today. I think they might even get to stay for the picnic, so you might get to the picnic. Well, there'll still be food, and you can have a chance to chat with them as well. We are, of course, absolutely delighted to have us join this weekend Dean Jagiellonian from the Jagiellonian University Law School, whom I'm pleased to have known since 1997, when he was one of the founders of the clinic at Jagiellonian Law School. We have the Foreign Law School Director, Piotr Szweda, who I've known since he was a student, because he was a student in the clinic. And then we have Jan Halberta, who's a professor at Jagiellonian, who is an alum of the American Law Program, I might add. And we have Lena Hlinska, who is a PhD student and one of the foundations of the Foreign Law School Center, who's Pio's assistant. And then we also have with us Ukashiwa Ila, who is a PhD student at Jagiellonian, who's joining us, and is an ALP grad. So we heartily welcome all the U.S. and international business and trade summer law program graduates who are here. We celebrated the 30th anniversary, as I said, in June. And at that event, we could celebrate the award of the Medal for Outstanding Contribution to Jagiellonian, the Zasluzone Jagiellonian University Medal, which was awarded to Professor Lee Bukowski in recognition to his contributions to the academic community and to Jagiellonian. He, not unfortunately for him, but unfortunately for us, he's in Europe, so couldn't join us today. But also at that celebration, we had Monica Rohner. And of course, many of you know Monica. Monica was our alumni director. Monica, with her husband, Dean Rohner, were in Poland in 1992 in the summer of the founding of the summer program, and were able to make a number of trips to Poland, 15 maybe. And Monica, formerly Monica Novak, was very happy. Monica can try out, can impress you with her Polish shortly. But we were thrilled that Monica was able also to be in Poland in June, along with 8 of their family members. And Dean Rohner also was honored for his contribution and steadfast support of our Polish programs, and received the plaque and honor from Jagiellonian University. So we are glad that, although Rhett isn't able to be here, that his son, Mark, who's a JD graduate and a summer program graduate, is one of our panelists. So next year is the 20th anniversary of the LLM program, because that first graduating class was in 2004. So we hope that we'll be able to do similar celebrations, probably in June in Krakow, and again at reunion weekend here, which is always covers the first weekend in October. And we will then be inviting all of our summer program alumni to join us. All of our LLMs are summer program alumni, and we hope that other summer program alumni will also be able to join us in celebrating. So the International Business and Trade Law program has spawned 2 children. I mentioned a moment before the American Law program. That's a certificate program in American law that Catholic professors teach each year between October and April at Jagiellonian University. When I'm explaining it, they're 1-week courses in different aspects of American law, with actually intensive research and writing courses. We normally have a negotiation course. So it in some ways shows the approach to legal education in the US, which in many ways is quite different to the approach to legal education in Poland. And Jagiellonian, when I'm explaining this, I say, think of our certificate programs here at Catholic, in securities or comparative international law, where you take a group of courses and then they apply to your JD degree. And that's what this program is like. We offer 12 courses. Students, if they take 8 of those courses, they can essentially get a semester's credit toward their magister degree in Poland for taking that set of courses. The Foreign Law School Center has a number of foreign law school programs, German, Austrian, French, Slovakian, so they're sister programs that have some kinds of similar arrangements. And so that is one of our programs. Increasingly, we also have a number of practitioners who join us. It's eligible for continuing legal education credit. And it's been great that we also have, in that sense, it's also like an American law school in that we're not very age graded in the US. We have many people who go to law school after retiring from a career in the military or in the federal government or whatever. So it's great to have that span of experience also in the American law program. Then some people choose to go on from those programs and get the LLM degree. So with us on the screen, we have Justina Regan. With us here, we have Vincenzo Senatore, who are both people who did our summer program in Poland, who did our American law program, and then came to DC for a 7-week summer session to complete their LLM. We had 10 LLMs here last summer. We expect to have a comparable, maybe more, here this summer. Now I'm going to turn to our panel. So talking about the accomplishments of these people could fill all our time, and then we wouldn't have time for the discussion. So I hope you all have bios. If anybody doesn't have bios, wave your hand. Lena has some extra ones to help you out with. And so you can glance through and hear a lot read a lot about the very distinguished accomplishments of our panelists. As each panelist speaks, I'm just going to say a word or two about them, but the details about them are there. All of them are International Business and Trade Summer Law Program alumni. Again, 2 of them are LLMs, 2 of them are USJD graduates, and 2 of them are people who joined us in the summer program in its early years. Our panelists have been asked to address 3 questions, and each of them in turn is going to talk about these 3 questions, and then we're going to open for discussion and to hear from you as well. What factors in the last 5 years have most affected your law practice, thinking particularly about cross-border border practice, but also more generally? Second, how do you see that impact developing in the future? Increasing, diminishing, changing? And this third question, of course, is not unique to international practice. What are positive or negative aspects of the move to more online work? Your answer might refer to the dynamics within the law firm, client relations, or institutions with whom you interact in your work, like relevant tribunals. So I think, as I said, this of course has affected everybody, not just people in international law practice, but in some ways, I mean, I kind of have a theory that people who were international law practice already were working online quite a bit, because by definition, a lot of your clients or, associates were in other countries. So in one sense, it might have not impacted you quite as much. But at the same time, we all know that this has made a big shift. So what we're going to do is take the 3 panelists who are here in the room with us, and we'll take them in alphabetical order. So I'm going to start with Tom Hamal, then we're going to Helen Gagaji, and Mark Lubakowski, and Vincenzo Senatore. Then we're going to turn to Titus Statovsky and Justina Regan. Titus is in New York and Justina is in Chicago. And they had hoped to be with us, and we wish they were with us. But we will be glad to see them online. And in the miracle of online world, we're also recording, so we can hope that will be available henceforth. So I'm first going to turn to Tamas. Again, very distinguished bio there. Tamas, if you have a chance to watch the other YouTube, had lots of interesting things to say in June about how his Boeing scholarship, when he was here in the late 90s at Catholic for a period of time, sent him to a large US law firm, but also to work on the Hill. And Tamas is doing a kind of practice now, after having been a partner in White & Case and having been a more conventional lawyer for a long time. He does a kind of practice that we think is very common in the US, what we call the Washington lawyer. I mean, he does a lot of law and public policy work, which still is considered kind of a strange animal to a lot of people in Europe. He also has quite a distinguished art collection, which is one of the things that's also in his bio. And I like to remember that lawyers who live full lives often have other interests besides being lawyers. So let me turn to Tamas to start us off.
Thank you very much, Leah. I really appreciate this kind invitation and a very nice introduction. Dear faculty, professors, it's a great pleasure and honor to be here and talk with you about some practical aspects of my practice and the practice in turbulent times. It was well, if I think about back September 2017, which is exactly 5 years ago, I quit a partnership at international law firm at White & Case when I was leading a energy practice, and I decided to pursue a small boutique. So it's a one, but this is a turbulence I put myself in because it's not related to what we see from outside world. I will get to the point that we are talking about the outside turbulences. So from my perspective, this 5 years changed everything. So one aspect is this changing big international law firm partnership into small regulatory advocacy boutique. That's one thing. The second is that you quit international transaction into a smaller projects. then also you change a situation when you had no online meetings and you have all the meetings online. And you also what is important, and it also changed the remuneration for lawyers. So I think that the hourly the charges, hourly rates, they're somehow in dispute. So there's more retainer, more success fee. So it's also a difference between what we have experienced in 5 years ago. But my background is the energy law. So I've been doing energy law for the last 20 years. And also this is another turbulence that's changed, and it's changing. I did a lot of national resources. I did a lot of mining, and now I do renewables. I do offshore. I do offshore wind, onshore wind. I do PV. So this is also the practice has changed. One reason is because of the EU policy. The second, and the speed up, is also the Russian aggression. So also what is going on outside, it's very strongly interferes what we do in our practices. So so this is the experience. Obviously, online, as it was mentioned over by Leah, it changed a lot, because I don't remember me participating in online meeting until 2019. And now basically half of the meetings is held online. So the pluses of that is obviously time saving. It's enormous how much time we wasted on travels and meetings that lasted 1 hour and had also the greenhouse effect impact, and so there was that's the benefit. But I do see number of minuses, and this is one of the reasons I'm here, because I just wanted to meet with you. I just wanted to talk to you directly, and just not to be. And so even though it's like a 10-hour flight, still it's worth meeting, and it was worth meeting in person. So it's a number of reasons you would like to just basically talk to people. And if I think about the future trends and what we might expect in these turbulent times, well, I don't think that this will end. So this turbulence will continue on, unfortunately, and it will have different aspects. I think that if we look at this from the client relation perspective, I think a client will be more reluctant on hourly fees. They will be more interested in flat rate, and they will be more interested in success fees. Also, clients put us in a situation when we have to compete with each other. Sometimes there are 2 or 3 firms working on one project, and we look at each other and we look how we practice and what we do. So there is a sort of peer assessment, so this creates also more competition and more sort of transparency in doing things. So that's my observation. Obviously, the online meetings, they will stay with us forever, and there are a number of I mean, 5 years ago it was completely. Nobody would have thought about that court hearings we would have in online. And this is like regular practice these days, and the number of court hearings are online, and everybody's sort of prepared to that. And so very conservative courts who we thought that would never change, they did change, and we do have online court hearings. The same with the parliamentary commissions. Well, I remember myself participating in numerous parliamentary commissions online. And also, you may have a voice, you may speak, you may advocate for the case, you may present your arguments, again online. But still prefer the other one. But this will happen. I think that the Russian aggression on Ukraine, which is very important from at least my perspective, and energy perspective, energy regulatory issues, it will also have a significant impact on law practice and what we do, because because we have to basically transform the energy systems, and I do see it very closely. As I said, I have no longer that many contracts with the natural resources company, because I remember representing US shale gas companies in Poland for 8 years. They were prospecting and exploring the reservoirs, but they are gone, and they're not talking about coming back. So this creates another issue that the transformation will happen. Customers would like to buy renewable energy. So, and the war also speeds up the process, because I think that there will be, at least from the Polish perspective, there is no business as usual, or coming back to the business as usual. But the renewable transformation will continue on, and this will create some more work, more jobs for lawyers, number of transactions, number of regulatory issues, because obviously this energy is sort of more complicated. So so if I look from this, online will continue on, the pressure from customers will continue on, and also in the merits, the energy transformation will create new jobs, new legal need or demand for our services. That's what I have for the beginning, and happy to be questioned during the panel. Thank you very much.
Next, we welcome Helen Gagaj, who was a student of mine. I took 2 classes. Actually, I want to point out that Helen was #1 in her class at Catholic University, one of our very distinguished graduates, who, as you will read, had a wonderful career, particularly in arbitration. Who's taught at Catholic as an adjunct, and we're delighted now to hear from Helen.
Good morning, everyone. I'm very delighted to be here. Thank you, Professor Wortham. Thanks to the school, to organizers, to everyone who's here. One thing I have not done much in these turbulent times is stand at the podium. So bear with me here. Hopefully this will go well. As was mentioned, very much now used to speaking from home, whether that's conferences and the meetings, client meetings or otherwise, meetings with colleagues, or court hearings or arbitration hearings. So when we talk about growth in cross-border dealings, trade, investment, what we see, and that's where I come in, is the disputes, right? So if we have a dispute in cross-border transactions, that usually leads to a dispute resolution method, which overwhelmingly is international arbitration. So that's where I come in, and international arbitration community, international arbitration system has been, as you would expect, very much impacted by everything that goes that affects beyond borders. So obviously COVID, it has not been 5 years, but it does feel like COVID has been impacting us for the past 5 years, if not more, right? So COVID, unfortunately, Russian invasion, all of that created well, many problems, but the one I will focus on is, for example, disruptions in supply chain and other issues, which in turn that impacts international contracts. And you have failure of performance, you have claims of breach, and therefore uptick in international arbitration disputes that this generates. And what we see in this kind of disputes, whether it's COVID related, war related, supply chain issues and others, is going back to first law, school year, contract classes of impossibility, force majeure, frustration of purpose, and those kind of doctrines and issues that the clients now have to deal with more on broader scale than we have seen before. That then also in turn generates clients' interest at the time of contract drafting to make sure that force majeure clauses are in the contract somehow to be to protect themselves from other unexpected events that might occur in the future. So in addition to COVID war-related issues that affect, cross-border transactions and investment, also, and this was mentioned, so I won't go too much into detail because we have energy expert here, but ESG and renewable energy related programs and projects also means that we will see more disputes and issues and claims arising out of this project. These are usually very large projects, very capital intensive projects and financing behind it. So if everything does not go according to expectations, you can expect very much large disputes arising from these projects. And of course, the ESG issues, still pretty new, so we'll see where that leads. But in addition to affecting international commercial contracts, also everything that's happening now that we see this turbulence impacts very much investor-state relationships. So there's not only disputes in commercial sphere, but also investor-state sphere, and that, again, going back to my practice, gives rise to investor-state arbitrations. So when the governments react, whether that's COVID, whether that's renewable energy programs and projects, whether it's net zero programs or others, we see changes in regulatory regime. And whenever you see changes in regulatory regimes or governments taking certain actions, then foreign investors, if that negatively impacts their investment in the country, can lead to disputes between the foreign investor and the state. So we are seeing and will continue to see, I believe, that kind of disputes as well. Increased disputes means also more focus now. This is not very new, but increased focus perhaps on third-party funding, because third-party funding is not very new, but now as the companies are trying to manage risk and liquidity issues, third-party funding is becoming maybe even more popular. And finally, I will note more the procedure and conduct of international arbitration that has been impacted by everything that's going on now, is that international arbitration had to adjust and did a very great job adjusting right away as COVID hit, jumping straight to online hearings, online arbitration hearings. And from us, from lawyers' perspective, that was obviously very good. There were certain delays as we all figured out when to schedule hearings, but initially, but after that, it became very much a second nature that we all expected that arbitration hearings will take place online. Clients had also some adjustment time at the beginning, because as some clients would like to, instead of giving testimony over Zoom, they want to present their witnesses in front of the arbitrators in a room so that they can explain and be very passionate about their case and what has gone wrong. So not every client was happy and eager just to present their case, which is very important to them. And we're talking about obviously very high stakes cases. They do not want, didn't feel natural to them that should be resolved without meeting the decision makers in person. But most of the time, though, clients have been more understanding. First, we thought that this COVID would be over very soon. Then obviously that did not happen. And instead of delaying the resolution of disputes indefinitely to schedule the hearings, it certainly made more sense to get the decision in a timely manner and go along with online proceedings. Now, I've done court hearings online as well as arbitration hearings online. There's obviously pluses and minuses. There is something, it was already said, there's something about seeing people eye to eye and listening to them, whether that's from the arbitrator's perspective. I also serve as an arbitrator. It's great to be able to watch the witness testify in person than on the screen. It certainly saves time, of course, and is efficient, but it creates some troubles when you're talking about witnesses in the council that are spread across all the continents and time zones. So that's a challenge. But as I mentioned, overall, international arbitration practice and community really adapted quickly and very well. I think this, as was said, online dispute resolution now is here to stay for a very, very, very long time, and certainly meeting up in person, whether it's with clients or for very minor hearings, that's gone. But large merits hearings, at certain points, we may see some comeback of that. I think people do like, from the arbitrator's perspective as well as clients, they do will try to get in person for the large merits hearings till perhaps as we ease into that post-COVID times. And I do not know how much time I have, but and I do want to say another thing I want to mention is, and maybe it's not turbulent times, but it's nonetheless an important trend, is initiatives that arbitration community is trying to not forget during these turbulent times, is initiatives behind diversity, efficiency, greener arbitration, which COVID has helped very much, obviously, in terms of diversity initiatives. Obviously, we pay attention to appointment of female arbitrators, so that's still an ongoing strong trend, and we want to do much better. So not necessarily related, this particular one, to turbulent times, but nonetheless an important trend. So bottom line, I guess, but to close out, because I'm afraid I've gone over time, is that international arbitration is playing a huge role in resolving cross-border disputes, which we will see more and more of in turbulent times, especially whether that's war-related. And if, for example, as we saw with respect to Crimea, we will see more disputes arising after this war that we see now, but also in terms of procedure and of arbitration. Procedure of arbitration itself has also adapted very well and will continue to play a role in this cross-border transactions and dealings. Is that yes? Thank you. Trying to wrap up very quickly. Very good.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to turn to Mark Lubkowski, who, as you can see from his bio, has had a distinguished career both in the U.S. government and then in private practice in the world of international trade.
Thank you, Professor Warden, for the invitation and for the opportunity to speak with you today. Thank you for coming. As we were preparing for this presentation and looking back at the last 5 years, I try to focus on the issues that we've been working on, but it just occurred to me when Tomasz was up here speaking that 5 years actually is a little bit of an anniversary for me too, because we, in our practice, I joined Clark Hill as an international trade attorney, and I came almost exactly 5 years ago. It was in August of 2017 to a mid-sized firm that at that time just needed somebody to kind of get the trade group up and going, and I really didn't know what to expect. There was, we had a new president. There were a number of trade issues. There was a trade war starting. We didn't really know what that would bring. And within a few months, the firm tripled in size, merged with a few other firms, and suddenly we had this trade war going on. And basically, within a few months, Trump made trade lawyers great again. I mean, we had a lot of work to do, and it started what at that time became really a geopolitical battle, particularly with China. And for us, that meant more work. We couldn't really complain. We had we represent primarily U.S. importers and foreign companies, a lot of them in China, as well as the Chinese government. So there was a very sensitive kind of balancing act at that time, and it's continued since then. So I would, when we look back at the last 5 years, what have been the main issues, and really they haven't changed too much since 2017. So geopolitical shifts are probably the biggest one. That is, U.S. policy of decoupling from China has been really ongoing for the past 5 years. It started with Trump, and some will say that maybe it was a little bit late coming because there have been concerns from US industry for years, from labor union for years. And then suddenly the pendulum swung completely the other way, and we had tariffs against China. We had since then we had forced labor issues come up in trade with China. So that geopolitical, that policy towards China has not changed with Biden. Basically, it has stayed the same. If anything, the Democrats and Republicans, that's probably the one issue that they can agree on in Congress is the anti-China posture that we're seeing. What else has happened is, well, I mentioned forced labor. This has been ongoing for the past 5 years. There have been forced labor laws on US books for almost 100 years, but they really haven't been used too much and until I would say late 90s and then really more of an uptick in the last 5 years. What that means is if a product is coming into the US that's assumed to be made with forced labor, customs has the ability to stop it, detain it, and ship it back or destroy it. So that law has been enforced by customs, and some see it as kind of a geopolitical strategy against China, another way to chill trade and make importers think twice about buying from China rather than Vietnam, Malaysia, or another country, because they don't want to deal with the headache. We don't know, if the product is made with prison labor or if it's made in Xinjiang, which is a province in China, which China has been accused of using Uyghur labor from Xinjiang in production of certain products. So the law on the books now allows customs to stop certain products. It's really been in effect since this summer. I won't get into the weeds too much on that, but that is one of the issues that we're seeing as another kind of hot topic. And obviously, since COVID, supply chain issues, bottlenecks at the ports. There was a shortage of truckers. There was a shortage of drivers. This has been, and then there were astronomically high container costs. So before COVID, an importer would pay $4,000 per container. Within a few months, that was $20,000. For some importers, that meant that they were paying more for the container cost than actually the value of the goods inside the container. It was absurd. And there were only a few companies that control the shipping lanes in the world. It's almost like a conglomerate, and they can control those prices. So those companies were making quite a bit of money over the last few years during COVID, and there was a shortage of containers. So that issue seems to have dissipated a bit. I was talking to clients just recently about the container costs. They have dropped below COVID prices, or right around pre-COVID prices. So that's stabilizing. It's a positive sign. Now, if we're what we can see in the next few years in the future with regard to these issues. I would say we're not going to see any kind of decrease in the posture towards China. I think it's even, both countries are escalating. It's a tit for tat game at this point. I don't see the US backing off on some of these policies. I don't see the tariffs going away anytime soon. Maybe there will be certain products that can be excluded from the tariffs, but overall, I don't think they'll be going away. The diversification by US companies to move to other countries to try to decouple themselves from China. We're seeing companies move to Vietnam, move to Cambodia, move to Korea, Thailand. And many of them think, well, we're going to avoid this issue of tariffs, or avoid this issue of anti-dumping countervailing duties against those countries. But what's happened is Chinese companies are also adjusting to this. So they're moving their production to those countries. What this is resulting in circumvention cases filed by the US, either by the US Department of Commerce or US companies. Basically, what they're saying is, well, you're shipping a product from Vietnam or Korea, and you think that that's free of dumping duties. but in fact, it has Chinese components. So all you're doing in those countries is minor alterations, and you're really trying to get around that dumping duty. So this game will continue for a few years to come. We don't expect that to change. But what it does offer is an opportunity for US trading partners to take advantage of the situation. And we're seeing some of this already with Mexico companies moving production to Mexico, reshoring production to the US, moving production to Canada, and preparing themselves for these shifts. It's just a lot easier than dealing with the headache of supply chain issues. You've got a trading partner down south, north in Canada, that's a lot easier to deal with. And they do have their own problems, but they're not insurmountable. So that is one of the trends that we're forecasting for the next few years, and it's probably not going to change anytime soon. What are the positive and negative aspects of working on or working remotely? And there are pros and cons. Obviously, I think some of that already has been discussed today. The pros for our firm and for our practice in particular international trade is that we can basically work pretty much around the clock. We were doing that a little bit before COVID because we work with international clients and international firms, and this just kind of made that on steroids a little bit, because you can get up at 7 in your pajamas and work with a Chinese consul who's just getting ready to go to bed or finishing up their day, and it kind of continues all the time. The negatives of that are it's not so much for us that have been doing this for a few years, because we sort of know each other when we feel comfortable with these issues and working remotely. I think the impact is on the younger associates and really the mentoring part that they may be missing out, because in certain areas and litigation, I think trade in particular, where you have a lot of filings, somebody that you don't have the in-office experience, or somebody kind of interacting with you nonstop, it's very difficult to pick up on nuances, pick up on little things that need to go into a brief or the filing. It's hard to do remotely. So those younger associates are missing out on a little bit of that interaction, the mentoring, and they also may be missing out on some of the interpersonal connections, because we find that we've seen that with some of our associates over the last few years. Some of them, there's a mental health issue. Some of them, if they're working remotely and they're not able to interact with their colleagues in person or their supervisors, there's a tendency to get into your own head a little bit, and it's maybe not the healthiest thing. So what we're encouraging is for at least a hybrid kind of arrangement where people come into the office, 2 or 3 times a week, whatever is comfortable for them. And that seems to be a pretty good mix where they can still have personal interests, work from home, kind of family life, and their own interests. So I think that will continue. We're still trying to find a sweet spot in that. So
Great.
I'll stop right here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, already I've heard mention 2 things that Catholic's recent programs have been involved in. As many of you know, Professor Duggan did a wonderful conference on human rights issues in supply chain. That was just a couple of months ago. She's unfortunately out of town, but would have loved to be here. And of course, Vincenzo Senatore with our alum Andrew Palmieri did one of our great webinars on force majeure contracts, which continues to get hits on YouTube. So we're going to now turn to Vincenzo.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Professor Horta. The last time that I was in this courtroom was in 2019, and was a panelist, and the topic was cross-border lowering the digital age, actually. We discussed actually about the topic that's very important, and I think that's the first factor that we'll discuss with you today was artificial intelligence. Well, artificial intelligence, I think that's the most important factor that's affecting the legal profession. it is suggested that the artificial intelligence has the potential to increase the business efficiency, but also there are some consequences that we have to discuss, keep in mind to avoid that the lawyers in the future disappears. They're talking about robot lawyers. They are talking about new technologies that will replace the law firms that we know now. I pay your attention, for instance, to one new technology. There's a company set up in California recently. It's called donotpay.com. And if you go Google it, you can see the first page is the home of the world's first robot lawyer. Fight corporations, reduce bureaucracy, shoot anyone at the press at the bottom. This is terrible, in my opinion, because they try to involve people to engage in sue someone just pushing a button, and this is something that a part of the rules of professional conduct. That is something that I would like to discuss with Professor Wharton, because we don't know who is behind this new technology, who will be responsible for malpractice, for instance, and about identification of the client, about interview, just taking the identification and taking information on how to prepare a document, an engagement, signing a letter of engagement. This is something that we need to keep in mind in the future. And I think that the Bar Association has to be more involved to protect the category, the lawyers, and to investigate these new technologies. This is the first factor that, in my opinion, is affecting the legal profession. The second, of course, is COVID that has changed the way as we work. Of course, I don't want to discuss this pandemic now because it's a matter of fact. So we work remotely. I don't like working remotely. I don't like attend hearing remotely. I like to be in the court. I like to make my advocacy. I like to see and the eye of the jury or judge and discuss the case at the bench and with my clients, of course, in the court hearing, not behind the screen with maybe someone in picture. So this is not my view of the law. The third point is just focusing on Brexit, because my practice is in London. So Brexit is, of course, affecting my law practice in terms of uncertainty of the US citizens. Of course, the law is completely changed. Brexit does not apply EU regulations, EU directives. So international private law now applies to all the matters involving the UK. For instance, this is my main practice, is recognition and enforcement of foreign judgments in the UK and vice versa in USA, in EU and the UK. So this is something that affecting the law practice, and more law firms have been busy restructuring themselves in a way that will allow them to continue to best serve their clients at a European level. And another point that I need to point out here is also that the English lawyers have lost their rights under available under the European membership to advise on most state law and European law. So we had a lot of your English solicitors who have pre-qualified in European countries like Ireland. The second question is, how do you see the impact developing in the future, increasing, diminishing? Well, Brexit will see its impact diminished as new laws are enacted to be to the current legal issues, assuming that there is a cooperation at the political level. With regard to pandemic and the new technologies, where this is a trend, and of course, it's very likely to increase in the near future. The last question, to trying to remain in the 5-6 minutes allowed to me, is what are the positive and negative aspects of the move or more online to more online work? Well, First, increase productivity, reduce cost of commuting, pollution, and the time and save time, also energy, and spending more time with the family. This is a matter of fact. But there is always but. There is the productivity argument is countered by social and interpersonal aspects. Most of my clients sometimes call my office saying, I want to see you. I want to see if there exists the office, if there is a lawyer behind this website. Well, the clients, there is possibility the clients mistrust virtual lawyer. This is a matter of fact. They want to have a relationship. So the famous client-attorney relationship, the clients must trust, and again, also lawyers must trust who is in front of them. So this is, I think that's the most important. Otherwise, we will see in the future that as Facebook, Instagram, we are losing our social, personal interaction between us. And of course, as I said before, I don't like remote hearings. So I think that this is my closing speech, and thank you for. Thank you.
So when you look at Mr. Satowski's bio, you will see that in addition to being a lawyer, he's also has a distinguished career in investing, angel investing, working with startups, and it'll be very interesting to hear his perspective now.
Okay, I'm starting my clock here. So I started my career on Wall Street doing financial engineering, and that blew up in 2009 for me. So I got the taste of turbulent times quite quickly, and I got used to constant change. Later, I moved to Silicon Valley, where I helped create those robots where our distinguished Italian colleague scared of. So I kind of feel responsible for that. And I, between starting my own law firm, I bootstrapped a law firm using technology. So I want to give you maybe the 5 headlines that I think are important for me during the last 5 years. Number 1, software is eating up the world. Tasks, manual tasks, repetitive tasks, tasks that are inhumane can be done by software, artificial intelligence, can be automated. This is important for lawyers because it liberates lawyers, increases the quality of life of lawyers, and that horrible billable target can be met through software. So software is here to stay. It's not something scary. It's something that will help us and will liberate us, and it will be also beneficial to our clients. Software is also helping to decentralize talent pool. It's, as you probably know, it's very hard to find lawyers, and a couple of the colleagues mentioned the element of mentorship. I think software is going to help decentralize talent pool and find amazing lawyers to work for clients and also for law firms. For example, in my organization, I only hire LLMs due to immigration laws. Some of them have to leave the US before they get their H-1Bs, and they work remotely from their home jurisdictions. And I can use that to my benefit. Next, I mentioned that I lived in the Valley for over 7 years. With technology, it turns out that I don't have to be there. I can be in a place that is nice and it has a more tax favorable location and less crazy politicians. So decoupling of legal services from location and industry. So you don't have to be stuck in crazy California or crazy and expensive New York City to do finance. There is a problem with legal services. I think what I've learned in the Valley is that you have to think in terms of products. Law firms, lawyers are horrible about productization, and this leads to problems with scale and delivering services at scale at lower value. If it's repetitive, it should be scalable and there should be a lower price. So what Tomasz talked about, different fee structures should be normal because you can build a scalable business, legal business thanks to software. Then my last point about things that have changed. As a U.S. citizen who did an LLM at Harvard, I had a problem of finding a job in the U.S. And that was because I was originally born in Poland. And as I heard from a distinguished lawyer in New York City, that's a tier 2, tier 3 country that the US does not do business a lot with. And I think that's very similar for people from Africa and Eastern Europe in general. That has changed. Tier 2, tier 3 countries are coming to the market. They're sexy now. I wouldn't call any of my tier 2, tier 3 clients as countries or clients from shithole countries, as our former president did. But these places are remaking the global software and geopolitical business. I think this is an important moment for Poland and Central and Eastern Europe. And I'm very bullish on Poland, especially in light of the conflict in Ukraine. It's a one-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I think as lawyers, we can't, excuse my French, screw this up. And the more lawyers from the Catholic University program that are in places of influence, the better. Impact and development in the future headline, there is no magic ball. It's only going to get more bumpy. And what do I want to say here? Law firms. Complacency leads to innovation. So maybe some law firms and lawyers are complacent. This will lead to innovation and unfortunately disruption. And we're going to see change in the legal sector that will create value. Firms that are horizontal and have network effects will survive and will flourish. And I think as lawyers, we need to get out of our comfort zone and look for value in other places than just providing a legal document. It has to be, as the distinguished colleague from Italy mentioned, there has to be a personal relationship. And I wanted to end, does remote work or is it good or bad? I think it's neutral. It's just a tool. And if you have an amazing lawyer that can help a client for remote work, I think that's better. Clients have more choices. It's also potentially good for associates as they can experience mentorship, not only from their home office. Thank you so much, and apology for the fast pace. I wanted to be on time. Thank you so much.
Okay. Our final words in the initial panel are going to come from Christina Regan in a moment. I want to, and then we're going to open to the audience for comments and questions. And I just wanted to get a heads up again. We're really happy to have Ms. Jagiellonska here from the embassy. So when we start the discussion, I'm going to give you the opportunity to make a first comment or question or whatever you would like to say. So just letting you know that. And so then, and again, we'll open to the rest of you. If we have time at the end, I'll say to our panelists to think of, if you have one quick thing that we have, if we have time, you want to say in response to something somebody else said, so you can be thinking about that. So finally, now we're turning to Justina.
Professor Wortham, thank you so much for the introduction. First and foremost, all the best from Chicago. This is one of the advantages of this new reality that we are living in, right? Regardless of where you are, you can join and you can participate. So thank you so very much for that. Speaking as last does have advantages, but also does have some disadvantages, because everything that I was hoping I could mention, such as Brexit, such as China, such as energy crisis, such as artificial intelligence, has been already covered. And covered to the point that I don't think I could add any more value to those points. So let me focus on some most recent development that I would like to approach from both professional and also a slightly personal perspective. So when we woke up on February, technically 25th in the US, we woke up to a completely different world. And I think that what happened in Ukraine has changed our reality as lawyers and also as people. On the personal level, I've been doing M&A and international corporate work for years. Being licensed both in the US and in Poland positions me pretty neatly when it comes to working with European clients. And my work has always been really rewarding. But to be completely honest with you, at times I've been asking myself a question whether what I've been doing as a corporate lawyer has actually been making a difference. So I was always trying to persuade myself that, yeah, it creates more jobs, but at the end of the day, it is making rich people richer. And then it changed. So when February 24th happened, my firm, thanks to 3 offices in Poland, got really engaged in what was happening in Poland in terms of helping Ukrainians. And I personally didn't expect to get that many calls from US colleagues who were being contacted by their Ukrainian friends who were actually walking towards the border. So I happened to be the contact person between them and my Polish colleagues who were on the ground next to the border trying to make arrangements for those individuals. At the same time, it happened that some of my American Ukrainian friends were also trying to find a liaison of someone who had contacts in Poland who could make arrangements for their friends, their family members who were walking towards the border as well. And that was the most rewarding moment of in my career when I actually did feel that I did make a difference. On the personal level, so that was this very personal remark. On the professional level, I don't know what you've been seeing as lawyers, but I had so many transactions in the pipeline before February 25th, and most of them were put on hold. When it comes to transactions that were scheduled by big corporations, big European corporations, who I feel that at this point are basically holding their breath and they are waiting to see how the situation evolves, whether they will need those resources that they were planning on spending in the US, or maybe they would rather play it safe and carry on their plans in the future when the world is more foreseeable and when they know what will happen. On the other hand, I've also noticed that many European wealthy individuals actually decided to accelerate their plans on expanding to the US, thinking that in this uncertain reality, having another option of having another market, having another place where they can potentially move for good could be a good strategy, could make them potentially safer in case anything were to happen. When it comes to the online or the pandemic and the change in the way we as lawyers have been working, I've always been a true believer in personal interaction. I've always believed that that's the way we are not only generating clients, but the connection is what actually makes us get work, get hired, meeting people, being able to shake their hands, and basically feeling their energy. So for me, not being able to do that and not being able to travel was a big game changer, and also made me realize that increasing our online presence and making sure that our LinkedIn profile is up to date, making sure that we publish, and also that we are even more responsive than we were before the pandemic, meaning the 12 or 24-hour rule as to when you should respond to an email is not applicable anymore. because responding to an email is the only thing that you can do to connect with your client. The client that you probably will not meet in person next time you are overseas. So that was a game changer that for me required some shift, some change in the way I've been thinking of, perceiving, or approaching my online presence. And at this point, once the pandemic hopefully is over, combining those two, meaning combining this increased online presence and being able to finally meet your clients and colleagues in person, this is something that I think has changed my practice.
Thank you so much. About almost 25 minutes where we can add. So again, I want to first turn, and so we're delighted to have Susan Vanska with us. So we're glad that we've had very good cooperation with the Polish embassy and also with the American consulate in Kraków for years. For many years, Professor Lubakowski organized alumni events at the Polish embassy. I've been pleased to be there many times for those events. When we had the 15th anniversary of the LLM and the 10th anniversary in Kraków, the American consulate hosted us at a cocktail party. And actually, I believe the American consulate in Kraków a few years ago devoted a presentation at a conference to thinking that this cooperation has been one of the most outstanding examples of educational cooperation within the American Foreign Service activity, which we were very proud about. So we hope that will continue. And so we're very pleased to have you with us. If there's any question you want to ask or comment, we'd be glad to turn to.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here today. On this rainy day, day of union celebration, wonderful cooperation, wonderful friendship with very summer and the Jagiellonian University in Kraków. I'm probably the only not a lawyer in the room today. But I enjoyed this seminar very, very much. I think my husband, I'm feeling that you'll somehow for years now, that we have been having wonderful conversations and deliberations and seminars, with our employers and also back in Poland and Europe and everywhere together. It's a big pleasure for our embassy to be, in a way, part of collaboration, friendship between institutions, and I can assure you that it's going to continue, and we want to continue supporting you in whatever way we may take out. If that would be another celebration at the embassy at some point, we are here for you, and that would be an amazing thing to do together. As I said, I'm not a lawyer, so I probably not have various facts and sophisticated questions to you, but my question would be, when I'm also reflecting on how our profession, the diplomatic profession, has changed over the last 5 years, it has changed dramatically. My profession has changed very much since February 24th as well, and I'm doing much different things than I used to do over the last 12 years before the war erupted. And I'm very much anxious about how the profession is going to change in the next 5 years. And I was wondering how you think the profession of a lawyer in the general sense is going to change too. There was a provost lawyer mentioned today, and sometimes we may think that, that this profession will like prove to, this robotics interfering into the sense, the core of the law, and of the execution of the law. It's already here. They are issuing the profession of lawyers. The big data is changing also the field. So my question to you would be, very big. It used to be like a cheap question that that's conversations when you're like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I think after seeing all these wonderful things that I see today, that is a very big question. Thank you very much for having me today.
That was a great question. And what I'm going to do maybe, and by the way, this is the mic that's up there that picks up the recording. And I think it does a good job of picking up from the audience. So we're looking up there. So what I'm going to do is take this excellent question, something about thinking about what you see yourself in 5 years, and ask for just like a 2-sentence answer about something you think might be the same or different. That's really putting them on the spot, right? A job interview question. I love that. So let's just start down with Helen at the end, go through these awards. And two folks out in Chicago and New York or wherever to do this. And so just a quick, what might be different?
Yes, as they say, it's usually takes a longer time to prepare shorter briefs, you know, so it's something here to put it into sentences. I think from my perspective, because I am an international arbitration disputes lawyer, and so I just do disputes arising out of commercial conflicts or investor-state relationships. I certainly see myself doing, not that I don't work enough now, but more of the disputes, but in different areas now, based on all the changes that we talked about, just more disputes in the different sectors, the new sectors now, whether it's renewable energy or others, and unfortunately, war related, and that arises out of war as well. So certainly for the next 5 years, I think more disputes in these areas is where I'm going to be very much involved in.
Great, Mark.
I would refer to my wife who works in a law firm, but she's not a lawyer. She works on innovation technology. So this type of advancements, and she's always telling me, you need to get into the 21st century and start using technology because we've been resisting it for so long. But just from talking to her, I think that trend is not going to go away. It's a lot of the work is becoming commoditized, and it is being able to be done by software and AI. I think that some of the more complicated work, it's going to take a while for that to reach that point, but it's definitely moving in that direction.
Great, Thomas.
Well, you probably know this famous saying that data is new oil, right? So this is so whatever is to be digitalized, it will be digitalized. So there is a number of profession that will be sort of in the cloud and will be AI involved. That's for sure. And I see, but on the other hand, there will be a space for lawyers who are not just lawyers. They're not just technicians. So they have to have some psychology background. They have to understand politics. They have to understand sociology, a number of other branches. So you have to look broadly because this is what the client would require. I mean, the technical thing is one part and it will be like 50% of the work, but the other 50% of the work is someone who is capable of understanding like all the dots and connect them. So I think this is highly qualified lawyers will be in demand. And one comment to Helen, what you just said about ADR. I remember in the law school, I took the course of IDR, but there was nothing going on. I mean, from my perspective, it was at least I didn't want to go into arbitration, but I wanted to go into mediation. And there was no mediation whatsoever. And what I see as a trend, and I think that the trend will continue on, the number of people will mediate their disputes. And I am a mediator, and number of cases came to me shortly after the war started. I wasn't accident or not, but people decided, okay, let's forget about the courts, let's forget about the arbitration, let's mediate, and let's find someone who is sort of capable of finding a solution, how to find so because they found it. It's a cost it's a much cheaper solution and it's much more effective. So that's another trend I would see for lawyers in demand.
Thanks, Vincenzo.
Yes. How do you see myself in 5 years? Well, more old for sure. And I guess no robot associate in my team. Of course, I think that after the new scenarios, the pandemic, the legal professions changes we have seen. We have had more troubles, a lot of troubles actually in the contracts. So now we have learned that it would be better to advise clients to include in the contracts global cross-border transactions, force majeure clauses, including pandemic clauses. So the how to see myself is, of course, studying again, because the law is not just it's dynamic. So we need to live with the life. We have to see what's going on in the life during in the world, and so we need to learn and transfer all issues in our work, such as in our last conference with Andrew Palmieri that we had. We talked about force majeure clauses, and above all, how the COVID has affected above all the contracts, international contracts. So just study.
This time I'll let Justina have the floor first, and T2s will be stuck with me last. Justina?
So when it comes to what's coming for us as lawyers, I couldn't agree more. New technology, artificial intelligence, but in addition to being a corporate lawyer, I also specialize in data privacy. And what I see coming is that people like myself and other privacy lawyers will be getting more and more busy. And I think that this trend that already started in the US, and I know it has been like that in Europe for years, I think that it will be only growing and increasing. So what I see is more and more privacy issues, more and more privacy regulations, and hopefully, and I've been keeping my fingers crossed for that for quite some time, a federal US Privacy Act that will preempt all state laws. But I don't think this is something that we can escape for.
A priest friend of mine in New York said that you have to have big dreams. So for me, building a huge legal empire, so that Catholic University of America comes to me for naming rights for one of their new buildings.
Yes, I'm for that.
So the check is on its way to Catholic. 2, I want to, each year in the next 5 years, I want to find one unicorn. And then I want to beat Tomasz in his art collection. So we can donate it to a good museum, or we can establish it together. And I also wish for myself and for Poland that it'll be, both countries will be less divided and people will work together for the common good, and that people in both countries will be successful and they will work together for a better world and for better countries, regardless of their political perspectives.
We have just 10 minutes left. I'm going to give you my own answer to this question. And there's a chance that might take up a lot of the time. So think about if anybody has a burning final question. But when you asked about where do I see myself in 5 years, I've thought about this a lot. But in like 4 areas of my life, I have things that I've developed a lot. I've devoted a lot of my professional life to, and my goal at this stage in my life is for those things to continue. And I think, we all have experience, and we know that the move from the founding generation to institutionalization is a challenge. That happens in startups. It happens in people who found businesses. It happens in countries that become independent. It happens in NGOs. In any aspect where you have energetic, passionate people who create something, moving from that to something that is institutionalized and can continue and thrive is a challenge throughout. And many things fail. And so I have several places in which I'm trying to make sure there are a next generation of people who are eager and willing to step up and take leadership and do the work. And but this one is number 1 because I feel like I took over being director of the American Law Program and the LM in 2003. And I do think actually almost from the day I took over, I was trying to think of what comes next, because it is very much in my heart. And having spent now almost 20 years on these programs, I believe in them really deeply. I think we've made a lot of effort in telling their story. We have a lot of ways that, you can listen to the tape, and I have really, last night, I was talking to some 97 graduates. Every time you talk to somebody who went to the summer program, they start talking about how it changed their lives, how they have lifelong friendships, how it completely changed their perspectives, and that's really important. And getting people to know, again, 1,000 of these graduates. And it, depending on when you took the program, something that Tomasz and Cesare from PricewaterhouseCoopers, some of the people from the 90s, of course, you have to start to think 1992 in Poland. 1992, Poland didn't join the EU until 1997, right? Is that right? And, there were no international trade courses. There were no European Union law courses. Rat had a vision. He had a vision of what the country needed, what would be important to the country. And so many of our people who did our programs in the early years also recognized that they personally were lucky. They came along at the right time, knowing how to speak languages. They got some educational opportunities. And, we have a number of extremely successful graduates from the 90s and, the early 2000s. And one of the great ways they are giving back, and it's a legacy for our programs, are the fabulous internships we have in Poland. We constantly have to keep explaining this to new generations of students. One of the things about being an educator is you want to say, oh, but I said that last year. Well, the fact that you said it last year doesn't matter. These are new students. Just like, of course, people looking for business and law firms, you have some of the same problems, I think. But to get across to our students, as a first-year student, you complete your first year. Maybe you send out 100 resumes to try to get a good internship. On the other hand, you could come to our summer program and hand us your resume and have a wonderful internship at PricewaterhouseCoopers, at some of the best law firms in Poland. We have law firms in Poland who put on their website that they had an intern from Catholic University, and that was like great news, And so it's constantly helping people understand how important these programs are. A piece of that is money. One of the things that is a purpose of a lot of these events is to, right now, we have ways in which our programs are supported by tuition. And, that works to a certain degree, but it doesn't work well enough. In terms of completely securing the future, we have to build a stronger financial base of these programs. Now, one of the things I think that actually has happened very effectively at Jagiellonian is the institutionalization of the programs. Our good friend Frederick Soll founded the Foreign Law School Center, but it's now in its 4th director with Piotr. And I think if Piotr were to move on to greener pastures, Jagiellonian would not say, oh, okay, time to end the Foreign Law School Center. They would say, that's a part of our institution, that's what we do, and, all programs have to sustain themselves, but I think having it more firmly established that this is a central part of our program, more awareness of why it's important. Again, when Ralph Rohner was recognized in Kraków, Ralph's leadership was amazing. And his leadership in building this building, but also his vision and leadership that international programs were a critical part of what future lawyers will do, and that what being a lawyer in the 21st century. I've heard it many times in the United States. I think we all know you can be a lawyer in small town Iowa, but almost certainly at some point in your practice, something cross-border is going to happen. Somebody's going to show up who has a child custody dispute with somebody who's in Europe. Somebody's going to be an immigrant. They're, increasingly business. I own a farm in Missouri still, and the person who farms my land sells the soybeans directly to Taiwan. And he's been to Taiwan a couple times with the delegations of farmers who go meet the people who buy my soybeans. And that's a really different world than when my great grandfather settled that farm in 1867. So again, I think the way these programs, and Dean Payne is really interested and excited. We'll talk about this in the state of the law school, but he does see the strong base we have in these programs. We have more than 2,000 alumni of these programs once you add them all together. And that's a base from which we can build even a broader international global program, not only one that's not only Poland, but has the ability to go to other parts of the world as well. And that we've had models we really developed a strong curriculum in the American law program, is my view. I mean, we really do offer things that are very, very helpful and complementary to what they get in a European legal education. They're different and they're also very helpful. And to use some of that curriculum we've developed in those programs in order to expand to some other parts of the world as well, which I think is very exciting. Also, of course, coming back to the war. I mean, I've been to Poland 42 times. I'm fortunate to have been in Ukraine several times. And Jagiellonian has very strong ties and programs in Ukraine. So some of my constant thinking about what's going on in Ukraine is seen through my Polish colleagues. And of course, I think, it's in an odd, ironic way, people now know where Poland and Ukraine are. And in some ways, I hope that redounds to our benefit when we're recruiting. And certainly the world appreciates the extraordinary contribution of Poland and the Polish people. I mean, the idea of absorbing that many people, that carefully. And on my final point here, in the summer program last summer, we had 7 people. At the past, we've sometimes had as many as 25. With the war in Ukraine and the pandemic and 2 years of suspension, 7 students was a miracle. Now, all 7 of those students had a wonderful time. They're all gung-ho. Paul was the vice director of the program. He's working with them. They're anxious to promote the program to students. And I think, that will be true. And I hope that will really redound to the benefit, because again, in its own sad way, I think there has been a broader awareness and a broader appreciation of the importance and the courage and the critical investment that we in this country, and anybody who believes in democracy, believes that people on the front are doing for us and doing in really, really important ways for the future of the world. So anyway, thank you so much for being here. It's 12 o'clock. I think there's at least picnic food somewhere. Okay, all great. This is Audrey Connor from our development office. We're also glad to meet you. And so thank you so much to everyone for being here. And I'm sure there'll be opportunities for all those questions and discussion you wanted to do to have at lunch. So grab our people. Okay, thank you so much.
To pa, Justyna, będziemy w kontakcie, zadzwonię do ciebie.
Super. Do zobaczenia na początku listopada.
Koniecznie, widzimy się w Miami.